Hi everyone, welcome to API Authentication with Apache APISIX and Ory Hydra video tutorial. My name is Bobur and I'm a developer advocate. As you move to distributed service architecture, you may not consider using common libraries or SDKs, or let's say build your own service to handle cross-cutting concerns like security, authentication, or authorization. Because in our modern era, there are ready solutions for free for us to handle this kind of stuff, and you can fully focus on the business task, on the core features at your hand. So in this walkthrough, I would like to show you how to enable API authentication with the two coolest open source projects like Apache APISIX and Ory Hydra. With that plan, let's get started. So here is our plan for today. We're gonna start with understanding what is API authentication, and we can have a look how API gateway centralized authentication can solve some kind of cross-cutting concerns problems regarding the authentication. And then we're gonna have a quick introduction what is Ory Hydra as an identity provider, how we can use it, and then I will explain shortly about OIDC plugin, OpenID Connect plugin that Apache APISIX offers, and then at the end we will have a demo by using OIDC plugin together with Ory Hydra. There are a variety of ways to how to authenticate API requests. Here are the three most common methods, as you can see, like HTTP basic authentication, API key authentication, auth authentication, or simply no authentication. Let's say when you have cases for the internal services when they are talking to each other. In that scenario, even you don't need any authentication available for your API. The simplest way to handle authentication is using HTTP basic auth, where the username and password are sent alongside every API call. You can use HTTP header and encode the username and password as it's shown in the picture. Application programming interface key, API key. Another technique that creates a unique keys for users and passes them with every request. The API generates a secret key that's usually very long and difficult to guess, and it's also typically passed together with API authorization header. An API gateway with microservices is a typical pattern for distributed service architecture, where you usually implement all the kind of API authentication process. Because in today's world, we usually create multiple microservices for a particular product, and the client apps usually need to consume functionality from more than one microservice. And for each this service, you will have different endpoints accessing these services from the external world. It doesn't make sense to expose multiple URLs, right? We should have a single entry point to all our services. And based on different paths, we should be doing a routing, as you can see. As an authenticator, API gateway looks for access credentials in the HTTP header, for example, bearer token JWT, and implements a business logic that validates those credentials and checks whether they have access or not. There are many API gateway providers. Let's take Apache APISIX. It's a lightweight open source API gateway that sits in the front of your upstream services. It's very easy to configure and quick to deploy. It's also capable of authenticating a particular user or machine that accessing the API. For example, you have three services that you want to expose to the external world. On the diagram on the left shows us a more common traditional authentication approach. Each application service might have own authentication logic that's used to support a set of process handling for the authentication. And on the right side, you can see another figure. The user or application party can go directly first to the Apache APISIX and Apache APISIX can identify the client by credentials and then passes authenticate identity information further down into upstream, the backend services. And the backend services then can easily read user information from the header that Apache APISIX provided. In most cases, what the developer is really looking for is centralized authentication, because centralized authentication can solve many problems and have some benefits. Let's say security, because there is no need to keep multiple authentication credentials in different places anymore. And also the application can share user credential data, or it completely it improves completely the performance by responding quickly to authentication requests received from application servers, let's say from the external world. It can also improve the observability, because as API gateway, a central point, you can observe the US services in one place. And also it's easy for development, because for the previous scenario we can achieve, let's say, reduced amount of development by replacing the part of development logic to API gateway, and we don't have to put the logic in each service. API gateway can be typically where we do all the interactions with IDP or identity provider for those upstream services, and it alone can interact with the identity provider, and it knows how to deal with authentication logic flows, and by avoiding the need to repeat the development for the authentication logic for each microservice, let's say. There is a variety of identity providers such as Ory Hydra, Okta, Cognito, Azure Active Directory, and more. In this tutorial, we are mainly focusing and discussing Ory Hydra as an OpenID Connect authorization server today. Ory is the largest open source ecosystem in the area of authentication, authorization, access control, and let's say zero trust networking in the world. Ory Hydra is one of the many Ory products, and it's very secure, high performance, developer friendly when it comes to implementing a certified OpenID Connect provider. And OS2 and Hydra is suitable for the certain scenarios. Like say, if you would like to enable third-party solutions to access your APIs, or be as identity provider like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, you can enable your browser, mobile, and other application to access your APIs. At the same time, you don't have to store the passwords on the device and can revoke anytime the access tokens. Well, if you are looking for OS2 server which is open source, it just works, you should check out Ory Hydra immediately. And Ory products integrate very well with one another, but it can also work completely standalone. So all theoretical knowledge in mind, now we can jump into the demo session. Today we're going to run a mount container up by using Docker Compose. This example partially taken from Ory Hydra 5 minutes tutorial, how to get started with Ory Hydra on their official website. And we're going to work through how to set up Ory Hydra as a generic identity provider, and then we'll have a look how to configure Apache APISIX OIDC OpenID Connect plugin for our existing project ESP.NET Web API, and then we will perform how to enable the client credential grant and authorization flows for the existing API by using Ory Hydra and Apache APISIX. You can find all the code examples on my GitHub by going to /Hydra APISIX. On your browser, you can navigate to Hydra APISIX repository on GitHub and make a git clone. Then you can go to the project root folder and run Docker Compose with the quick start APISIX YAML file. And as you can see, the Docker containers now start to run, and now it's up and running. And if you go to Docker desktop, you can even see running containers, including some of the containers like Product API and APISIX and PostgreSQL and Hydra itself. If you open the Hydra APISIX project, you can find some important folders. You can pay attention, like I provided all the command line examples you can find on the CMD folder. And if you open APISIX, you can find all the curl or the commands we are using today in this demo. For example, we first run the multi-container app with Product APIs backend, APISIX, etcd, and Ory Hydra with the Docker Compose, and next we can create our new client, OS2 client, by using the Hydra commands, like Hydra clients create command. You can just copy and paste this sample into the terminal. If you run that, you to create a new client with client ID, your client ID, and you are providing some kind of secret, and we are using the endpoint, admin endpoint of Hydra, and we are giving some grant types like client credentials, authorization code, and to be able to make a refresh token. You can also verify if the Hydra client created successfully by running these following commands, by sending request to the Hydra admin endpoint, and then you will get a list of clients available. As you can, in my case, I have a single client, and then also I can try to perform the client credential grant to get create a token and get this token back by providing to the Hydra token client a command, some kind of client ID and secret. If you pass this command and run, you will get generated token. You can keep this token for the future. We're gonna use also with integration of Apache APISIX. Next, also you can test it out how token introspection works by providing this token to get the client information. You can just insert the token previously created, and then also get this command to test if we can able to collect the client information provided by token. So I will just paste this command, and then I can see that with access token I can get some of the information for the given client. Afterward, we can use another curl command to add redirect URI for our existing OS2 client with Hydra, because in Hydra there is no kind of special command to add this redirect URI. I can just request directly the admin endpoint to update the redirect URI list. In our case, it's just any redirect URI. It works after successful authentication. I'm putting just URI of APISIX OpenID Connect plugin. It just redirects to this page on APISIX. So if I press this code, you will get another response with the full client information, and then you can see that the redirect URI is actually updated. Next changes we need to apply for the Apache APISIX. The first step is we need to create a new upstream for our given product API as our backend, and we'll have a single node with this API as a backend service. So I can run this curl command against Apache APISIX admin API, because Apache APISIX provides admin API that we can configure like upstreams, routes, and services together. So I can just pass this command and run, and now I have a new upstream created. Upstream access a set of backend services. In our case, we have single product API, so we'll get successful response once Apache APISIX creates this upstream and maps all to the product API. Once we have upstream created, we can create a new route Now this admin endpoint call, once again, we gave just provider route name, and we need to provide also for which HTTP method we are enabling this routing mechanism, and for the given URI. And also you can provide in the plugins list which plugins you would like to use or enable for this given route. In our case, we are testing today is OpenID Connect plugin for the Apache APISIX to work with Hydra. So as you can see, I have providing client ID and secret, and I'm giving also discovery endpoint of Ory Hydra server provided. And as a scope, of course, we're gonna use OpenID. In this case, we are just switching off bearer only. The property, it means we are testing authorization code flow using Ory Hydra. It simply routes a request to the login page that provided Ory Hydra in a 5 minutes tutorial. It will redirect to this login page UI that we're gonna see. Now we can just copy this command and paste it into terminal. And if I run, it will create a new route for the given upstream. As you can see, we are mapping this upstream. It means each request to this API / products endpoint will be authorized with the help of OpenID Connect, and our authorization server gonna be Ory Hydra. So if I run this command, I got a successful response from Apache APISIX server. Once we enabled our route, you can open the browser and navigate it to the API products path, and then it will redirect us to login page provided by Ory Hydra. So we have just we have default credentials, as you can see, just for the login. You can provide login and password, and please remember me. You can just open this option as well. It will then in the next step it will ask to provide some consents to use OpenID, and I can say, okay, for my client I want to access resources as a behalf of OpenID, and then I will click the allow access. As you can see, after I enable this allow access option, it will redirect to this OpenID Connect page on the Apache APISIX website. It means our endpoint fully now kind of secured, and only after authentication process the client can access this endpoint. I mean, of course, if we have redirect URLs, it's different, but you can also provide there's a redirection to this API product endpoint. Next, we can try to test the authentication between services when machine-to-machine communication enabled. We are using, let's say, client credential grant flow using Ory Hydra. But in the previous step, you may know, if not dies it already, like we did authentication between browser and identity provider as Ory Hydra. That's why we set also when you create a route, we set also bearer only to false. It means after successful authentication, the OIDC plugin can obtain and manage a token in the cookie, and all the subsequent requests will gonna use this token. Sometimes you might struggle to figure out which grant type to use, and probably this diagram can be very useful for this scenario to quickly check what kind of credentials you need. For example, if the access token owner is machine, you're gonna have a user client credential grant and for this Ory Hydra, or if it is user, you can just double check if it's a browser type app or server app. If server app, of course, you can give it to the authorization code grant, otherwise and the grant with PKCE as for the native application, let's say. Similarly, I can update my plugins OpenID Connect configuration and each config plugin usually in Apache APISIX has a set of attributes. You can check it out on official website what kind of other properties we have for the OpenID Connect plugin. And now if it is like client to service communication, that's why we are enabling mirror only true, and the other configuration pretty much the same, only we are adding also introspection. In addition to introspection point, we are also providing authentication method for introspection endpoint. So I can just run the next curl command to enable client credential grant for this our API. So if I run this command, I will get successful response from Apache APISIX. Now the plugin is updated. Next and final step, we can check if API endpoint can be only accessed with the authorization header token in place in the request after we enable this the client credentials. And every request we do against /API/produce should check the authorization bearer token in the header. So now we can make a now negative test. Just if I try to access /API products endpoint, I should get this unauthorized error as we expected, because we didn't provide any the token, and there is no kind of verification process between Apache APISIX API gateway and I didn't provide Ory Hydra. So we need to send also tech token, I mean the valid token. Of course invalid token also going to be rejected directly from Apache APISIX. In the token area, I can use the token we created in the second command line, and then try to exit this endpoint with our sample client token that we created also before the step. So I can just copy this token and bring it here and try to now run this curl command to hit this endpoint with a valid token. So if I do that, I should get the successful response. Here we go. Now we enabled the authentication and for this backend endpoint by using Apache APISIX OIDC plugin. With that, we are close to end of this session. I hope you would like it. If you have any extra questions on how to integrate with Apache APISIX and Hydra, please feel free to reach out to me, and thank you for watching.